To further enhance our national security, my administration will be reclaiming the Panama Canal, and we've already started doing it.
President Trump has aggressively reasserted U.S. influence in Latin America with the capture of Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro. But since taking office, he's also been threatening to take control of the Panama Canal. The threats have reignited tensions between the U.S. and Panama and revived a decades-old political debate over who should control the canal. 60 years ago, one flashpoint in that debate would change the course of U.S. and Panamanian history.
Panama broke relations with the United States. Relations were not restored until the U.S. promised to re-examine the status of the canal zone.
And it started with an argument between high school students.
You've got a very small event that turns into an international crisis.
In the 1960s, decades after the U.S. secured the right to build and run a shipping canal across Panama, thousands of Americans lived in the area around the canal, known as the Canal Zone.
Life in the U.S. Canal Zone in the 1960s is something that's almost out of time. It looks like Leave It to Beaver. Single-family homes, pristine green lawns.
What the Canal Zone residents have done is to recreate a tiny slice of America on the 9th parallel. The morning paper is the Panama American, in English. Movies and television shows are a little late in coming, but 100% American.
The Canal Zone was a wonderful place to grow up in. Since it was all government controlled, the government took care of all facilities. They had planted fruit trees among the buildings. We had mangoes and lemons and limes and things like that. If I wanted a mango, I could go to a tree and pick a mango. It was idyllic.
It is just like a U.S. town, complete with U.S. laws, U.S. lawmen, the American flag, and the Little League.
When you grow up in the Canal Zone,
I pledge allegiance to the flag.
You understand the greatness of the people who built it. And it instills a sense of pride in what America can accomplish.
The Americans who live on the Canal Zone are called Zonians. And they really see themselves as defenders of this outpost of U.S. power.
But outside the Canal Zone, life was very different. And there was growing anger about what many young Panamanians viewed as an American colony on land they thought should belong to them.
Los Zonian era una gente que no querían hablar español, que se sentían superiores, que eran arrogantes.
Rimsky Sucre and Pablo Mudara went to high school just outside the Canal Zone, and they could see the mango trees planted by the Americans.
Nosotros no podemos ir a coger los mangos. No, eso es de la zona del canal, eso es de los gringos. Esa fue una animadversión que me fue calando de que ahí yo no puedo ir a agarrar algo en mi propio territorio. Nosotros en ningún momento fuimos libres. Nosotros vivimos bajo el paraguas norteamericano.
Their school, El Instituto Nacional de Panamá, was becoming a center of anti-American activism. And the students had one main demand.
Lo que queríamos era poder izar la bandera panameña en el territorio de la zona del canal, que era la lucha de muchos años.
After years of rising tension, the U.S. government agreed. It would officially fly both flags together in the Canal Zone. But after the Zonians protested, the zone governor decided that no flags would be flown at some buildings and took down the American flag outside Balboa High School, where Jim Jenkins was a student.
That just didn't sit right with me. Being an American school with American students, we wanted our American flag. The suggestion was made, why not just raise the flag at the school to demonstrate what we want?
And they stay there day and night for 1 or 2 nights. But then it gets complicated when the Panamanians hear of this protest.
Y era el último día oficial de clases. Y no hemos ido a poner la bandera en la zona del canal. Hay que ir a poner la bandera.
Around 200 Panamanian students marched from the Instituto Nacional to Balboa High School, carrying a historic flag from their school.
It's actually a flag that had been used in anti-US protests in 1947. The flag itself is considered pretty sacred.
Se la pedimos a nuestro rector y entonces él nos dijo, cuídela como con su vida. No dejen que esta bandera le pase nada.
The zone police allowed a delegation of 6 students to approach the flagpole.
I decided to climb the tree with a little Panamanian flag with the idea to be able to see what happened. Muchos estudiantes del College de Balboa y muchos padres de familia les abuchearon y también comenzaron a cantar el himno de los Estados Unidos.
They wanted to show their flag. We explained we could not put their flag up because we didn't want their flag up instead of ours. And we really couldn't put 2 flags up at the same time without putting one underneath the other. And that's not going to happen either. Somewhere along the line, something happened and the police pushed them off.
The Panamanian students were surrounded. A scuffle broke out, and the flag was torn.
It's really not clear what happens or who does it.
Y los compañeros, con rabia y llorando, se regresaron hacia nosotros. ¿Y qué pasó? Nos rompieron la bandera. Nos rompieron la bandera. ¿Y qué hacemos? ¿Qué podemos hacer?
Nosotros habíamos aguantado mucho. Esto va a ser lo último.
The Panamanian students ran out of the zone. By the time they got back to Panama, crowds were already starting to form.
Entonces, ahí comenzamos ya a agarrar los carros que decían placa blanca de zona del canal, lo volteábamos y lo prendíamos.
The rioting went on far into the night as the offices of U.S. business establishments were looted and burned.
It was an outburst of violent nationalism unprecedented in Panama's history. The students were outraged, and the government of Panama claimed it was unable to control them.
Panama's own National Guard does nothing. The commander of the Guard actually said later on, if we had gone in there and stopped the rioters on the first day, they would have turned against us.
That night, mobs tried to force their way into the canal zone, and shots were fired.
There are many eyewitnesses who saw Zonian policemen shooting into groups of Panamanians.
Y ahí tú no tenías ni que medir a nadie. Nosotros, cada vez que oíamos silbar las balas, uno nos decía, Dios mío, que no me toque a mí.
You have Panamanian snipers getting on top of buildings in Panama, shooting into the canal zone. And most of what the US Army is doing is counter-sniping, trying to sort of shoot snipers who are shooting at them.
Amid the chaos, one of Rimsky Sucre's friends was burned by a tear gas canister.
Yo quería llevarlo al hospital. Entonces, en una chivita de esa, desocupada, entramos él y yo. Cuando llegamos al Hospital Santo Tomás, llegaron carros y más tarde ambulancias y traían cuerpos de gente muerta. No estaba preparado para eso.
The violence went on for nearly 4 days. By then, 4 American soldiers and 21 Panamanians were dead. Hundreds more were injured. Investigators would find hundreds of bullet holes in Panama and the Canal Zone. Jim Jenkins became the face of the flag protest. He was called a monster in the Panamanian press and left the country at the end of the month.
Do you feel any responsibility for what came out of your protest?
Of course. Our intent was just to get our flag back at our school. If I hadn't participated in the flag raising, if we hadn't done that, what would have happened? It's hard to say.
The violence was a turning point. Panamanians now demanded more than just having their flag in the Canal Zone.
Queremos la soberanía total en la zona del canal. Ese fue el cambio que hubo.
The Panamanians decide that what they really want is the canal and the end of the Canal Zone. Once they have made that demand, it's really impossible for anyone to sustain political leadership in Panama without pushing that demand further.
In the US, the riots had convinced the Johnson administration that it was untenable to control the canal and started the process of negotiating a new treaty. But the idea of giving up US territory was controversial, and negotiations went on for nearly 14 years, over 4 presidential administrations. Many conservatives, including Ronald Reagan, argued that giving up the canal would be a sign of weakness and would make the US a laughingstock.
The Panama Canal Zone is sovereign United States territory, just as much as Alaska is, as well as the states carved from the Louisiana Purchase. We bought it, we paid for it, and General Torrijos should be told we're going to keep it.
But in 1977, a different view of America's role in the world won out. Panamanian leader Omar Torrijos and President Jimmy Carter signed a treaty that would, for the first time, give Panama control over the canal and the Canal Zone at the end of 1999.
These treaties can mark the beginning of a new era in our relations, not only with Panama, but with all the rest of the world.
Carter, he understands that Panama has become a symbol for all of Latin America. And so he essentially wants to advance friendship with all Latin Americans with this concession.
Fairness and not force should lie at the heart of our dealings with the nations of the world.
But the treaty had an important caveat. The U.S. had the right to intervene militarily to protect the canal, and it has become a flashpoint again.
We're going to take it back or something very powerful is going to happen.
Trump's rhetoric has led to turmoil and anger in Panama, where January 9th remains a symbol of the Panamanian fight for independence, 60 years after the confrontation at Balboa High School.
What is the real end game for the United States? Is it concessions or is it really getting the canal back? If it's getting the canal back, I think Trump and his Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, are really misreading the psychology of Latin America and specifically of Panama. It's simply there would be a high price to pay.